Yes, good evening and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kisakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back once again on this beautiful Monday night to yet again bring you the latest from the world of football, where we will be discussing West Ham versus Brentford. West Ham go behind, a goal they conceded in the 43rd minute of the opening stanza, just shortly before halftime. And again, Brentford sort of are surprising us in the way they are performing, not by the scoreline, but in the way they are, applying themselves. They had the goal, cancelled out by Igor Thiago, you know, by VAR as being offside. Of course, it was Igor Thiago who scored to give the Bees the lead there. Kevin Schade providing the assist. Again, I did mention this in the preview, even though my overall prediction zeroed down to a 2-1 victory for West Ham, they have been very, very disappointing on the nights. And that with that said, I did mention that if Brentford were to get anything out of this game, Igor Thiago and Kevin Schade were to have needed to be at the top of their game. Just watching here, Alfonso Areola being forced into another immaculate save by Igor Thiago there as Keith Andrews continues to see whether he can, steer this ship on. Anyways, before we proceed any further, allow me have our audios tested. Make sure everything does check out before I take you on this trip. Well, we will be speaking also about Sean Dyche getting the Nottingham Forest job. We will also be speaking about Arsenal, whether they can overcome Atletico Madrid in the UEFA Champions League. That game coming tomorrow night at 10 p.m. While Barcelona will have been in action against Olympiacos in one of the early kickoffs of match day 3 of the UEFA Champions League. So, yeah, plenty of things to talk about. The rest will depend on you, those that will be following the conversation, to decide where the conversation else leads. Otherwise, that's what I have on the menu for you tonight in this later night broadcast. Apologies for the lateness. But yeah, it's a bit of a cold weather out there following today's downpour around Kampala. So in case you're wondering, the weather, where I'm putting on in this sort of fashion or way, I can see Nuno Espirito Santo trying to add his team on as we are into the 82nd minute of the game, and Brentford still lead by a goal to nil. But I mean, West Ham have really, really struggled. He had three changes prior to the resumption of the second half, and then shortly thereafter he made another change, sort of moving back to the back three and playing with wing backs and something like that. But again, it's not shown any sort of impact, so to speak, in the way they've applied themselves, particularly going forward. So, yeah, you can see some of the disappointed West Ham fans are starting to walk out of the stadium. As a West Ham manager, I do not think we should be really putting Nuno Espirito Santo to the sword already. I think, given the kind of squad that is inherited, my issue with West Ham over the last couple of seasons has been how they defend. They just do not defend well. Yes, they can keep a clean sheet on a given day, but overall, the way they apply themselves defensively, it's never that good. They sort of struggle through those phases of the game when it comes to defending. Anyways, like I said, we'll kick things off at Nottingham Forest, where they are set to appoint Sean Dyche on a 1.5-year contract. Okay, maybe 1 year and 8 months, because Oh, let me see. Yeah, thereabouts. A 2-year contract, I think. Almost thereabouts, you know, because they want him to sign a contract until June 2027. So that means we are already towards the tail end, 2 months to the end of this year, which is giving you plus the other 6 months, 1 year and 8 months, there about plus 2 weeks. That's the contract that is being negotiated between the former Everton and ex-Burnley manager, Sean Dyche, with Nottingham Forest, who seem to have zeroed down on him after their talks failed with with um, with Roberto Mancini, the former Manchester City manager, who I think was arguably their um, preferred candidate for the role. You know, he was arguably their preferred candidate for the role, but it looks like that it's not going to be that way. It's not going to be that way. So, anyways, yeah. According to Fabrizio Romano, he did say that Sean Dyche is set to sign a contract until June 2027 at Nottingham Forest. Verbal agreement in place between parties, with the former Everton manager ready for a Premier League return. I think for most managers that have been out of jobs, uh, more recently, before the sacking of Andy Postecoglou, over in Scotland, Rangers had sacked Russell Martin, who had played for them sometime, I think, around 2018. And we're looking to reappoint Steven George Gerrard as their next manager. We know that Steven George Gerrard, I think, left around 2021, thereabout, to go and join Aston Villa, where things burnt his fingers before Aston Villa turned to Unai Emery. And then from there, he went to, I think, Al Ittihad in the Saudi Pro League, where again things did not go to the very best for him before, going into some form of sabbatical, in that sort of sense, for him. So he's looking for a new role. He said he had received some approaches, and that's Steven Gerrard, to get back into action, into managing, but he thought he did not have the right team around him at the time to be taking on new roles. And yeah, of course, we have to respect that, because usually when a manager is, before he gives guarantees to being appointed to taking on a role, among the people that he checks out on before actually giving the green light is those that he expects to work with. If he does not have certain guarantees of the team that should be surrounding him in taking on that job, then oftentimes they do not take on that role. Because they do not work in isolation. That pretty much we know. That very well we know. They will always work with somebody. The assistant coaches or managers. For example, I remember when Mikel Arteta took on the role at Arsenal back in 2019, he brought in the likes of Steve Wout, Albert Stevenberg, and then of course the likes of Inaki, the goalkeeping coach, joined the Carlos Cuesta, who has since left to join Parma. There's another whose name I'm forgetting, and then of course bringing in eventually this summer Gabriel Hens. So all managers, you remember Jose Mourinho, who worked with different assistants, including Aita Karanka, who he worked well with at Real Madrid before they part ways for him to join Middlesbrough. That's for Aita Karanka. It did not work out so well. But all I'm trying to say is that even for Sean Dyche, he must have checked, he's already given the green light that he's ready to put pen to paper. Of course, like I said, before they put pen to paper, they ask for a certain number of staff that I want to come with this number of coaches. These days, football has become so expansive in the sense that it's no longer just a first and second assistant who usually, let's say, prepare, what the training drills will be, take boys to, certain rules and reviews and things like that. These days you have a first and second assistant coach, then you have a set piece coach. Some have a throw-in coach, others have, of course, some move with their psychologist or physio, others will move with their video analyst and things like that. So usually when a manager is being hired, they tend to move with a minimum of 3 extra, 3 to 5 other people that walk through the doors with them. Usually then the clubs. Meanwhile, Konstantinos Mavropanos has had to be withdrawn through injury. He seemed to have suffered a knee injury as West Ham tried to fight their way into getting an equalizer in this game, which has approached, I think, around the 89th minute as we speak. But we are into the 90th minute, and that equalizer is still eluding them. So Sean Dyche has given the green light that he's available and he's willing to take on the role at Nottingham Forest. I know now, of course, if you are looking to play more fancy football or expansive football, as had been explained as part of the reasons as to why Nuno Espirito Santo was let go of, I do not think for 1 second nobody should kid themselves that even the minders at Nottingham Forest do believe that the appointment of Sean Dyche suddenly brings that. I do not expect that to be the case. Do not expect that to be the case. In any case whatsoever, in any case whatsoever. So really what you're having is actually a more boring manager, even compared to Nuno Espirito Santo, if you're getting Sean Dyche. That's how I would put it. And I'm not saying Sean Dyche is a bad manager, but like I said, Nottingham Forest are in that sort of zone or space where they know or where they need results. I thought they rushed this idea of wanting to play fancy football and, be nice and things like that. They rushed themselves into that kind of mentality or thinking. They have to take a step back. They have to take a step back and realize where they are. Yes, they've built a very, very good squad, very decent squad, which soon rather than later, if those players continue to perform, particularly the way they managed to perform last season, is going to start getting picked on. Players like Moriro, Milenkovic in that centre back, Ibrahim Sangare. There were teams that wanted to sign him during the course of the summer. You look at Morgan Gibbs-White, Tottenham Hotspurs wanted him. They managed to keep a hold of him. Of course, Anthony Elanga left, but Callum Hudson-Odoi could be one of those. They've just signed. You have a very, very astute midfielder in Elliot Anderson. Yes, you just signed Omari Hudson, but this is a player that even Brentford equally wanted to sign. So those sort of players that make this Nottingham Forest side tick will start to get picked on by the bigger teams or teams that are bigger than Nottingham Forest, not by measure of history, but by current standards or circumstances and things like that, So yeah, but so far that equalizer is still eluding West Ham United as we speak, but they are really, really trying to push for it. We are already into the 3rd minute of added time. So apologies, I tried to keep adjusting my phone so that to have the perfect balance. But anyways, like I said, if you're bringing in Sean Dyche, you do not need to kid yourself whatsoever that you are getting a manager that is going to promise you entertaining football. The only thing that Sean Dyche can try and promise you is results. To be defensively solid, that his team won't concede, one too many goals in that sort of sense, but results, pick up points, pick up victories, pick up draws here and there, and sort of get you back in the semblance of not having to worry about relegation, because that's what Nottingham Forest need to have at the moment. As we speak, they're further down in the table. They are in 18th place. That's a relegation place or zone that they need to overcome. So you need a manager that is sort of going to guarantee you that. And I believe that Dyche is one of those few managers in the Premier League or that have been in the Premier League before that can promise you that. Anyways, we will leave it at that, and then quickly go to the preview of Arsenal versus Atletico de Madrid. The question we do pose tonight is: can Arsenal overcome Atletico Madrid? Can Arsenal overcome Atletico de Madrid? It's a team they've met before in a European competition, particularly in 2018 at the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League, and could not get past Atletico de Madrid. Meanwhile, from the look of things, it looks like this game is bound for defeat for this West Ham side. It's bound for defeat for this West Ham side. Another 3 points dropped. I did say that if they needed to fight their way back through this fixture, through this season, you need to get to pick points off teams like West Ham. Off teams like Brentford. It's one of those teams that have sort of struggled in a way. It's 2-0. It's 2-0. Brilliant goal. Full-time score. Brentford 2, West Ham 0. It's finished. And Keith Andrews walks away with all 3 points there from the London Stadium. I mean, you must feel sorry for West Ham. You must feel sorry for West Ham. You must feel sorry for Jensen. Is the one that scored that late goal in the 50th minute of at the time to ensure that Brentford walk away with all 3 points, but also with the clean sheets. Now, this particular result or this particular game, for those of you that have watched it, or if you haven't, I advise, if you're a Liverpool fan, it's a game that you should have taken interest in, because up next will be Brentford that Liverpool will be facing away to the Dyche Stadium. Away to the Dyche Stadium, and you could see the celebrations of Keith Andrews really tell you everything that you need to know about what the 3 points mean to him and his team from tonight. So brilliant result there for Keith Andrews. Nuno Espirito Santo will feel the fire. He knows better than anybody else that he needs to hit the ground running. He needs to start posting some decent results in as far as his West Ham career is concerned. Excuse me. Not that his job is going to be under any form of threat really, really soon, but they need to start they need to start picking up some points here and there before things go from bad to worse. Anyways, back to the a preview of Arsenal versus Atletico de Madrid. Like I was telling you guys, it's going to be yet another occasion that these two sides meet in a UEFA competition, having met back in 2018. For those of you that care to still remember, Arsene Charles Wenger was into his final season at Arsenal when they last met when they met with Atletico de Madrid. It was a beautiful game of football that ended in a 1-1 draw. That was at the Emirates Stadium before a 1-0 defeat that Arsenal suffered away from home. That's away to the Wanda Metropolitano. And again, for all the players that did start in that game for Arsenal, they are no longer at the club. They've all left. Some have since retired from football. Those that are still actively playing are playing from elsewhere. On the other side of Atletico Madrid, they still have some of those players like Jan Oblak, players like Antoine Griezmann, are still around. So, Koke is still there, Um, ever since then, Thomas Partey has since switched sides, played for Arsenal, and even left, So back in 2018, Arsenal had that David Ospina, Laurent Koscielny, Shkodran Mustafi, Hector Bellerin, Shit Kolasinac, players like Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, Mesut Ozil, Granit Xhaka, Alexander Lacazette, and Danny Welbeck. Then that was for their starting 11. The bench had players like Peter Cech, the goalkeeper, Alex Iwobi, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Eddie Nketiah. It had Rob Holding, Calum Chambers. Nacho Monreal was in the starting 11, not Sid Kolasinac. Yes, it was Nacho Monreal that started at left back. On the side of Atletico Madrid, they had Jan Oblak, Diego Godin, Jose Mario Gimenez, Lucas Hernandez. Koke was in that team. Thomas Partey, Saul Niguez, Angel Correa, Stefan Savic was one of those players that featured in that game, as well as Antoine Griezmann, Kevin Gameiro. That game finished in a 1-1 draw with Simi getting a red card in that game. But somewhere, Arsenal could not manage to overcome Atletico de Madrid. So that game finished in a 1-1 draw. And the reverse fixture finished, I think, in a 1-0 victory for Atletico Madrid. I stand to be corrected, but I think, was it Alvaro Morata that scored that goal for Atletico de Madrid, in that sense. But anyways, so it's a very, very big fixture coming on match day 3 of the UEFA Champions League for Arsenal. The big question is going to be, is Mikel Arteta going to sort of do some bit of player rotation, given that majority, if not all, almost all his players did play 90 minutes over the weekend in their 1-0 victory against Fulham. Of course, the entire back four, including the goalkeeper, to make it 5. Look at that midfield of Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, and Beleche Eze. Beleche Eze was one of those that was withdrawn a little earlier to pave the way for Mikel Merino. Do you bring, in such a game, you bring Mikel Merino to start ahead of Victor Gyökeres, to give Gyökeres a little bit of a rotation, a little bit of a rest? He's played so many minutes ever since joining the club, and particularly the reason for that is because of the absence of Kai Havertz through injury, as well as Gabriel Jesus. So it's been a bit of bad timing for Arsenal in terms of giving a rotation to Victor Gyökeres. So I wouldn't be surprised if Mikel Arteta went with that sort of idea to play Mikel Merino up front and start with Victor Gyökeres on the bench. Because remember, in the aftermath of that great game at the Emirates Stadium, they will welcome Crystal Palace, a team that forced them in a 2-2 draw last season. And we know that Crystal Palace just came over the weekend. They had to grind it out against Bournemouth in a 3-3 draw. They had the chance to win it, but Joan Felipe Mateta was scored a hat-trick in that game and missed a golden opportunity. But that notwithstanding, you know that they have a tricky opponent in a London, rival in Crystal Palace under the charges of Oliver Glasner. The advantage maybe for Arsenal, in a way, is that Crystal Palace themselves are going to have their responsibilities to take care of on Thursday against, in the UEFA Conference League, with that action coming up really, really soon. So, excuse me, with Arsenal playing a little earlier, that's all, on Tuesday, and then Crystal Palace having to wait until Thursday to get in action. Maybe, just maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, because they will be at home against Lanaka, AEK Lanaka, in the UEFA Conference League. That's the action they will be engaged in. You sort of, which means Arsenal will have 2 good days of rest before they play Crystal Palace on Sunday. That game will be played on Sunday. That means Crystal Palace themselves. Okay, Arsenal will have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 4 days, while Crystal Palace will only have Friday and Saturday, and then they play again on Sunday. So that notwithstanding, they will play with that game in mind for Arsenal, because for every game in which Arsenal got points last season, it is going to be a very, very crucial game this season in terms of them changing their fortunes from finishing second to trying to win the Premier League title this season in that sort of sense and regard. But back to the fixture itself in Atletico de Madrid, the big question for me remains: is Mikel Arteta going to make any changes? Do we get to see maybe Miles Lewis Kelly start at left back ahead of Ricardo Carafiori? It's not impossible, but I do. Again, it's Mikel Arteta that we are talking about, so I do not think you and I should expect one too many changes. If there are to be some changes, it could be one or two here and there. And maybe Leandro Trossard doesn't start and it's Gabriel Martinelli that starts. Just thinking out loud. Maybe Ethan Nwaneri gets to start, you know, and then maybe Declan Rice starts at the pivot instead of Martin Zubimendi, and then you have Martin Zubimendi rested. I do not know. I'm just anticipating. But like I said, it's Mikel Arteta that we are talking about here. Usually, when you expect that he's going to rotate some players and give them a rest and give others minutes, that's when he doesn't do it. Again, I take you back to the game over the weekend against Fulham, and you are expected to see some changes early on into that game, but those changes did not come. In any case, I think he did only 2 substitutions. I stand to be corrected, but it was Ebeleche is withdrawn for Mikel Merino, and then who was it that paved the way for Christian Norgard? So he's that kind of manager. Sometimes even when you think that some of those players need a rest, you won't be surprised if no changes are made in as far as things go. Thierry Hincap is back into the squad ahead of that fixture against Atletico de Madrid. He's among those players that are back. However, the fixture still does come a little too early for the likes of Martin Odegaard, Anoni Madueke, Gabriel Jesus, and Kai Havertz. So then Ben White, I'm assuming if Ben White is 100% and 100% fit to start, you give maybe you and Timber sort of an evening off, not entirely, but at least give him a rest. In any case, even when you need to give Ben White minutes and then withdraw him later, you can still bring on Christian Mosquera. So I expect some bit of rotation to happen. But in case it were not to happen, I wouldn't be surprised either if he fielded the same team that actually played against Fulham without making any changes. I wouldn't be surprised. On the side of Atletico de Madrid, we are talking about a team that over the weekend had to grind it out when they won their game by a goal to nil. That game against was it against Osasuna on Saturday? I think it was against Osasuna on Saturday for Atletico de Madrid. That game they won by a goal to nil. Yes, it was against Osasuna. The goal scored by Almada. Of course, Alex Baina having a goal disallowed by VAR. So in terms of their setup, usually it's a 4-4-2 these days. That's how they, Alexander Sorof to play alongside alongside Julian Alvarez, or if it's not Alexander Sorof, then you could expect an Antoine Griezmann, because the only injury issue they have, that's for Atletico de Madrid, is Johnny Cardoso, who is out through an ankle injury. But expect Jan Oblak in goal, Clement Lenglet, Robin Lee Nomad, Marcos Llorente. This one scored a brace against Liverpool during their trip to Anfield on match day 1 of the Premier League. Of the UEFA Champions League. Then David Hanko to complete the back four. Then Alex Baina, Koke, Pablo Boris, Giancarlo Simeone, a very, very, decent player in there. Julian Alvarez. This one, Arsenal will really, really have to be Arsenal's back four will really, really need to be at the best of their game to keep him quiet or to limit his damage. Julian Alvarez, because he's the kind of player that can really score out of nothing. Whether it's a set piece, he will step up and score it. We saw, he scored already a couple of free kicks this season, including one in the Madrid derby. Alexander Sorof, very good in the air, So really, Atletico Madrid, they're well-drilled side. Like I did say, I think yesterday or the other day, they've not had the best starts to the La Liga season because they've struggled, really. 9 games played, 4 victories, 4 draws, and 1 loss. But again, that tells you exactly what you need to know about them. They do not lose too many games. They've only lost 1 in the league. They just have that knack of drawing. And if you press me, I don't know. I envision a draw here. I know Arsenal are yet to concede in the UEFA Champions League. They've been almost perfect. They beat up against Olympiacos. They did beat up against um, Athletic Bilbao by 2-0 on match day 1. So on match day 2, they won their fixture by 2-0 against Olympiacos as well. Still, so you look at that sort of trajectory. Gabriel Martinelli and Bukayo Saka led on in the game to see out that victory. Gabriel Martinelli also scored as a second half substitute against Athletic Bilbao, and I think Leandro Trossard was the other that scored in that game against Bilbao. So, and for Atletico de Madrid, I think, yes, they beat up against Eintracht Frankfurt by 5-1 on match day 2, having lost the opening fixture to Liverpool by 3-2. Like I said, Lorenzo has scored a brace in that one. But Giacomo Raspadori has scored in that game. Robin Lee Nomad, Antoine Griezmann, Giuliano Simeone has scored in that game, as well as Julian Alvarez scored a penalty. So that's the kind of team they are capable of scoring goals. However, they are also very, very capable of conceding them on the other end. In any case, that Liverpool game showed us, if anything, they are vulnerable. You remember the goal that won the game was scored by Virgil van Dijk off a set piece, and I kept saying it time and again. At the time when they had restored parity and the game was 2-2, I said they needed to be wary of Virgil van Dijk in the air because he's such a huge threat when it comes to set pieces. Now, when you translate or when you transfer that to Arsenal, then it doesn't get any. You do not get any better team when it comes to set piece play these days, or in terms of scoring from set pieces. In any case, their victory over Fulham over the weekend, that goal was off a set piece, another corner kick, brushed off by Gabriel Magalhaes, and then sent into the back of the net by Leandro Trossard at the back post. So Arsenal well drilled in that sense. So Atletico de Madrid will come into the fixture well knowing those are some of Arsenal's strength, biggest qualities. Also, how Arsenal defend. They really defend well. They are a well drilled side in terms of keeping their shape, in terms of keeping their structure, in terms of how they press, in terms of how they retreat once they concede possession, and things like that. In the last 2 Premier League games, they've not let in a shot on target. And then also, they also have a very good goalkeeper in David Raya. So Arsenal will be a very difficult team for Atletico de Madrid to beat. However, I don't know. I don't know whether it's me that has very little faith in Arsenal, or it's the respect I have for Atletico de Madrid and Diego Simeone as a manager to think that this could end in a 1 or 2-all draw. In a 1-1 or 2-all draw. That's what I'm thinking. Even though Arsenal would need all the 3 points. The advantage for Arsenal, it's a home game, but like I said, the last time they made out at the Emirates Stadium, it ended in a 1-all draw. Of course, so many things have changed in terms of circumstances, in terms of team structure, in terms of the playing staff. Last time out, it was Arsene Wenger in the dugout. This time one, it's going to be Galacita. Of course, Diego Simeone is still the same face. A few faces are still the same on the side of Atletico de Madrid, but everything has changed on the side of Arsenal. So, yeah. But today, Mikel Arteta was speaking to the media, of course, ahead of the game. He did do the press conference with Mikel Merino, and he did say when asked whether Arsenal when he was asked about Arsenal being the Premier League favorites, he did say the only thing that I embrace is when I see a team, energy, temperature, commitment, quality that they can deliver. That gives me the conviction that we can go all the way, but that that's it. That's just a feeling, you know. In other words, he's not trying to get carried away just because they have a 3 point lead, you know, with them. Then also speaking about the same game, Julian Alvarez on his plans for Atletico, he was pressed and he said, "Look, I believe we can't beat any team. We have a great squad. We have gone game by game, and we can't compete with anyone for sure." And that's very true. Atletico Madrid were drawing so many games at the start of the season, and they've sort of gone into the season in a way. And that victory against Real Madrid in the Madrid derby, winning that game by 5-2, should really, really give them lots and lots of confidence going into this fixture, that they are really, really capable of of going as far as we thought they should go. Because at the start of the season, when we were discussing about the possibility of when we were discussing about who I thought were title favorites in the Spanish La Liga, I did say it was Barcelona who are the reigning champions. I did put Atletico Madrid in second place, because I did not think, given what I had observed of Real Madrid during the course of the FIFA Club World Cup, that Xabi Alonso was going to get them kicked very early on in the season. I thought they would struggle with the start of the season, but somehow, even when they've not been playing well, they've managed to grind out results, and they have won 89. That's for Real Madrid to keep them at the summit of the La Liga standing. So it's been a bit of a surprise. While Atletico de Madrid have had a bit of a slow start. In part, I did expect it because they did sign so many players: Johnny Cardoso, Alex Baina, among some of the players. There's a left back they brought in, Rotegi from Atlanta. You know, they've had so many changes in terms of playing staff that you thought they needed to have them, well fitted into the system to get them going, and they seem to have matured in that sense, and that's why I think they're going to be a very, very difficult opponent for Arsenal to take on the night in the UEFA Champions League on match day 3 of the season. Then away from that, all the other fixtures that will be coming your way, like I told you, Barcelona will be in the early kickoff at 7:45 p.m. East African time when they play up against Olympiacos. Crite Almaty will be at home against Pafos, same kickoff time, and then the other games will kick off at 10 p.m. with Newcastle at home against Benfica. I think isn't this going to be Benfica's second trip to the UK following that 1-0 loss to Chelsea? Remember, Benfica are under the charges of Jose Mourinho, so that's going to be an interesting game to look towards to when you have Ed Howe in the other side of the dugout alongside his assistant Jason Tino, with Jose Mourinho returning to the UK once again. Then you have Napoli away to PSV Eindhoven. Bayer Leverkusen will welcome PSG. Then Bayer Leverkusen, ever since the sacking of Erik ten Hag, have had a good run of results. That have gone their way. So they are a much better team than they were under Erik ten Hag. Then Union Saint Gilloise will be up against Inter Milan. Copenhagen will be at home against Borussia Dortmund, while Manchester City will be away to Villarreal, and then Arsenal will be at home against Atletico de Madrid, and then on Wednesday, Athletic Bilbao will be at home against Qarabag. That's in the early kickoff, while the other early kickoff still at 7:45 p.m. will be between Galatasaray and Bodo Glimt. And then in the 10 p.m. games, Chelsea will be at home against Ajax, while Real Madrid will be at home against Juventus. We're going to see a repeat of the 2017 UEFA Champions League final. Sporting CP will be at home against Olympique Marseille. Olympique Marseille have been in a great run of form. I think they've won I think 5 or 6 games consecutively, including beating up against PSG by a goal to nil in a game that saw Roberto Di Zabi get set off the touchline. Then Monaco will be at home against Tottenham Hotspur, while Atlanta will be at home to Slavia Praha. Will be at home against Slavia Praha. Eintracht Frankfurt will entertain Liverpool in Germany, while Bayern Munich will also be at home against Club Brugge. Again, I do expect Bayern Munich to close to yet another victory to make it 12-12 this season. So yeah, and I mean that's the expectation. That's the expectation for me going into those fixtures into match day 3 of the UEFA Champions League. Then what else have we missed? Hi LFC, good to have you back. I'm surprised you're still awake at 26 minutes past the hour of midnight. Nice t-shirt. Thank you so much. It was a gift from somebody. Somebody, by the way, who is overseas there in the USA. So maybe I ought to give him another vote of thanks for it. And so thank you. How has been your day, LFC? Are you looking forward to tomorrow's game against Eintracht Frankfurt away from home? I know Liverpool have have everything to work through, but are you looking forward to the game? You know, do let me know what are your thoughts in as far as that particular game is. I was about to say I can't stay. I know you can't stay for long given the timelines. You have school tomorrow and everything in that regard. But you can help me. Just give me your feelings about, oh yes, Liverpool on Wednesday. Sorry, not tomorrow. Yes, your feelings about the game. Do you think it's the game that Liverpool starts to bounce back, or the bounce back is gonna have to wait until the weekend when you play away to Brentford at the Dyche Stadium? In case you're not aware, Brentford have just beaten up against West Ham by 2-0. Not that West Ham are the best of opponents to benchmark on, but yeah, we're talking about the same Brentford side that forced Chelsea into a 2-2 draw, that only lost by 0-0 against Manchester City, but also beat up against Manchester United by 3-1. So in case you need any reminders. You say your day has been good. That's awesome. You say you're also nervous about the game. I mean, I totally understand you being nervous about that game. I think most Liverpool fans would be. I do not think there are many Liverpool fans, if any, that are really beaming with any form of confidence at this stage in time, following what's just happened to their team in recent times. But I totally understand. I totally understand. So, anyways, that's been it for me for tonight. Allow me end it here. Unfortunately, we came a little bit late. I think it was about about 40 minutes past the hour of 11 or slightly beyond. But thank you so much, LFC, for being part of the broadcast tonight. Have a blessed night and see you guys. Let's link up again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. To have an extended conversation about some of those games in the UEFA Champions League that will be coming your way. Bye bye for now, and I'll see you tomorrow.